Good evening, I'm Eugene Chan and welcome to Straight Talk. Our guest tonight, Bernard Chan, is well known to us all in Hong Kong. Bernard has been recognized by the Hong Kong SAR government with our highest honor, the Grand Bohemian Medal, for his outstanding public service. He was Hong Kong Deputy to the National People's Congress and former Executive Council convener. More recently, he took up chairmanship of Our Hong Kong Foundation. He sits on and chairs many business councils, both local and overseas, as well as several government committees. Of note, he is chairperson of the Hong Kong Council of Social Service, steward of the Hong Kong Jockey Club, and also chairman of the M+ Museum. Welcome, Bernard.
Hi, Eugene.
I'm sure all our viewers may be a little puzzled by the title of our show. This is indeed a very special episode, or what we call a milestone for us, as you were our very first guest when I began hosting Straight Talk on 27th April 2021, some 1,133 days ago. I thought we could take this opportunity to reflect together on some of what has taken place in Hong Kong since then. We had the national security law being implemented, then 3 years of COVID, then a new legislative council, a new administration with a new CE, and more recently, we have had a revamped district council that has been going on and passed our own national security legislation, Article 23. So I've mentioned many things that has happened. I'm sure sort of pictures of what has happened will sort of flash through your eyes. So Hong Kong is kind of having a rebirth and continue this path from chaos to order and hopefully to prosperity.
Right.
I said hopefully,
right,
because it's not going to be easy. So how have these changes impacted Hong Kong over these last 3 years?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me back again. I couldn't believe it. You just reminded me it's been that long, 3 years. But like you said, there's a lot of things have happened. Like most things, there are good things and bad things. I suppose I'll start with the good thing first, right? The good opportunity. I think after 3 years of COVID, finally, now we're back, right? Finally open. But then, in fact, because for your show, I did some homework. It just reminded me it's only last year, February last year, that we completely lifted all the COVID restrictions. It's only last year in February that no longer we're required to wear a mask. In fact, I remember last time I was here, we both wore a mask.
Yes.
Right? So it's only that a year, a little bit more ago, that finally that we are back to normality. So a lot has been during that 2 years or so. I'll start with opportunities. Amazingly, arts and culture. You introduced me as M+ Museum, and of course I was very involved with Palace Museum. The last time I was on your show, because I was a chair for Palace, and now I'm with M+ and West Kowloon. This is definitely now one of the most important so-called the jewel for Hong Kong.
Right.
This is actually now what helped to reconnect us back to the world after COVID. I was just in Venice for the Venice Biennale Open 2 months ago, and unbelievable. People all recognize when I pass out my M+ name card. Everyone recognized the name.
Really?
Either they've been here already or they heard about us. Now, of course, this is a very captive audience of art and museum people, but still, this is one reason now people want to come back to Hong Kong. So clearly, there's something we've done right. Although West Kowloon is not something just happened overnight. It's 25 years in making. So it's open now at the right time. So last time when I was on your show, none of these have opened. Yep. So M+ opened in November 21. Right. Palace opened in July 2022. So, and there will be many more to come. So I think this is definitely the major highlight for Hong Kong now, a reason to bring people back for tourists. Now, we have also many new challenges that we didn't foresee before. I'm sure we all agree now we have a bit of a crisis right now. Are we going to remain competitive, vis-a-vis, for example, retail businesses? Because when the border opened, and well, I think what we completely underestimate is what the attractions and offerings in Shenzhen. Right. So that came as a surprise to us too. But obviously now require us to completely rethink about the way forward for Hong Kong. So there are definitely new opportunities and new challenges ahead.
Right. Bernard, when I look at you, I must keep on thinking that the work you've done for us, especially in the sort of government level, or the legislature, executive council, over the last 2-3 decades. So with the national security law being implemented and the sort of electoral reform, having patriots administrating Hong Kong, is that helping Hong Kong's own governance, in your opinion?
In fact, I think you asked that question more or less 3 years ago. My answer is the same. Definitely, I think with the new electoral arrangement, with the new administration, clearly, I think we now can be far more focused. I think in the past, things get too politicized right, at every level. But now we are far more focused to address more livelihood issue, the economic crisis we are dealing with right now. So I think in a sense it's good. But it's not. But that itself cannot solve all the problems. I think political issues are just one matter of it. There's still many, many issues that is far more deep-rooted and a lot of time are self-interest, right? I'll give you one case in point is the recent decision to abort, you know, the waste management, the waste charging whole arrangement. I was very involved in that. And in fact, it was the committee that I chaired 10 years ago. I was the chair for the Council for Sustainable Development. It was our council recommendation to the government at the time.
So are you disappointed?
Yes and no. I completely understand the rationale behind the decision to abort because clearly timing is off because today the economy is not in good shape. So this will actually pose extra financial burden to F&B operator and so on. So I fully understand the rationale behind, but I am disappointed because we've been in this for a long time. It's not even 10 years. I was involved 10 years ago, but then it was even before then we start this entire discussion. In fact, funny enough, where we are today at TVB, TVB clearly understand because right across the street from you is where the landfill is.
Yes.
And we're going to run out of landfill, right, to deal with all the trash that we produce every day.
So we have to come back to these issues.
Well, exactly. So it didn't go away. The issue is still there. Yes, we have an incinerator being in construction right now, but even when that incinerator is built and ready to open, it only addresses roughly about a third of the waste we produce every day.
Right.
So we still have to figure a way to induce people to change behavior. The whole waste charging mechanism is not about collecting tax, collecting money. It is all about inducing behavioral change.
Right.
So for us to waste less.
Right. Let me ask you, since you mentioned the economic difficulties or challenges we're going to have, how would you suggest our economic priorities and policies sort of to reshape to fit this new scenario? What shall we do?
Well, by the way, this is not new to Hong Kong. From my understanding is Hong Kong has gone through different economic cycle in the past. Each time, it's painful, but each time we manage to reposition ourselves. So I have confidence in Hong Kong to able to find a way out.
Right, so
but it requires us to sort of rethink about, we cannot continue to hang on to what we have done best in the past, because that may have been our winning formula in the past, but clearly in certain industry, it's no longer the case. Right. We no longer remain competitive, so we have to move on.
Right. We had Ann Kerr last week here, and she said that changes are imminent everywhere.
Yes.
And I think the whole globally is sort of having all this crisis. Do you think Hong Kong will be able to come back up stronger? Because in the past, we had our niche, which we're going to talk about. But nowadays, with all the geopolitics, they're really directing at us, especially as an international financial center.
Right.
So how can we come out of this direct attack?
First of all, I remain very confident on Hong Kong's future, largely because it's not just about Hong Kong. It's about our entire country, China. Right? We have 1.3 billion or 1.4 billion people with 400 million rising middle class. You can only imagine with that sort of hinterland,
right,
you cannot go wrong. Now, obviously, we are now in that downturn of the cycle, so it's not going to be an easy transition. But then with that market in place, so what requires us now to think of is how are we going to serve that market? At the end of the day, Hong Kong's future is always about adding value to China at different stage, right? 20 years ago would be a different topic, but today, clearly, we have a rising middle class of 400 million, some of those services that the demand of the 400 million will require onshore, some will be require offshore. So how can Hong Kong, as a city, as a service center, can continue to provide these different options, the optionality for both Hong Kong and the hinterland, the 400 million or even 1 billion people. So that is the role of Hong Kong.
Right.
But it's not just on the mainland alone. I think what the one mistake we make, I was the one who always been pushing it, but I can understand why all the attention is on the mainland, because it's such a big market. So why bother to look at anywhere else? Hong Kong future is, besides focusing on the mainland, but it's connectivity to the rest of the world,
right.
Particularly in the region, ASEAN, of course the Middle East, and elsewhere as well. So I don't think we have spent enough resources and attention in the past in these other markets.
Right.
So I think that is also something that now we have no choice, because when that one market that you're counting on is having a little bit of downturn, it actually in a way have no choice but push us to think beyond just Hong Kong and the mainland and think about where else more can we go.
Okay, let's take a break now. But viewers, stay tuned. We will be right back. Thank you for staying with us on Straight Talk. Mr. Bernard Chan is with us, and we have been talking about the significant changes in Hong Kong that have been taking place over the last 3 years. So, Bernard, in the first half, you had made a very good account of your view of what we can do and what we shall do. And I remembered Stephen Roach, the former chief of Morgan Stanley in Asia, said in February, Hong Kong is over. I'm sure you don't agree.
I don't agree at all. However, he actually raised principally 3 issues about Hong Kong. Right? First is we're too reliant on the mainland, China, which I somewhat agree. As I said in the first half, I said, well, because China was doing so well in the last 10, 20 years, so all our focus is on the mainland. But I think we should have also spent enough resources in ASEAN, Middle East, and Europe, and so on. So he's not that far off. Second point he raised was the geopolitical tension. Now, we all agree, yes, but what can we do, right? It's nothing we can do. The third thing he said, which I would never agree with, is that that one country, two system is finished. Now, he clearly don't understand why, what even the mainland China government would want the two-system work. This is the whole essence of Hong Kong.
Right, Bernard, I must ask you this question, because with a lot of our interviewees when they're here, many have told me that when they're overseas, I'm sure you might have come across the same thing, that, Bernard, is it safe in Hong Kong? I mean, can you still express freely? I'm sure that sort of sentiment is sort of floating around in the rest of the world. So, are you confident that Hong Kong can still maintain as an international financial and shipping center?
Of course.
Despite all those rumors?
Yes, well, that's the problem. We have to address that. And thanks to your program and many other international English-speaking programs, we need to do this more. Because, after the 2-3 years of COVID, and Hong Kong was somewhat in a hibernation during that time.
True.
So we just need to bring people back. Right? As soon as they come back, everyone I spoke to, ever since they came, they say, wow, well, Hong Kong is what Hong Kong used to be, right? So, but unfortunately, not many are coming yet. So that's the first thing we need to do, is to bring them back.
Ben, I must ask you one question, because you were with the last administration. In hindsight, should we have opened up a border earlier?
Well, I'm pretty sure the administration have a lot of things to consider. We are, first we have to admit, we are a few months behind everyone else.
Right.
So it is what it is, because obviously Hong Kong has been addressing both the international needs as well as the mainland needs. So we're caught in this situation. So it wasn't an easy decision at the time. But let's not go back to say, could have been done differently. I think what's more important is how are we going to position ourselves going forward? Right. So I think that is even probably more important.
When you say that, I'm sure we want our investors to come back, and we must understand our strengths. I've actually listed down, and just for a recap of everyone's memory. So we have a financial and professional expertise. We have a very efficient market. Anchor said Hong Kong is where business get done, and we've got simple and low taxation, free port, open economy, rule of law. Are these enough to ensure the resilience and competitiveness of our economy, do you think?
Kind of yes and no. I mean, certain industry, we are facing some challenges. You talk about the port, there are many other very big ports out there too competing with us. So at the end of the day is the cost issue and the logistic arrangement. Can we forever remain competitive? That's a big question for every industry to face with. But ultimately, it still comes back to the one market that we principally serving, and this is the mainland China, right? And their needs are changing too. For example, given the whole geopolitical tension today, many companies in the mainland China are talking about de-risking, right? When they're de-risking from the mainland, many are looking forward, maybe moving their operations to some of the operations, not all the operations, some of the operations to the ASEAN market and elsewhere. And of course, Hong Kong is always being used as the kind of like the way out. So can Hong Kong serve those purposes? So at different time, doing the different needs of the mainland, Hong Kong needs to position ourselves to know how to figure out how to serve them. Certain industry will remain very competitive. Financial services, yes. I believe that financial services still have offshore. We continue to serve the offshore needs for Chinese company, for mainland company very well. But those needs will continue to change. Now, how can we continuously try to re-engineering ourselves? That's the key word. So, but the most important thing is our professions in Hong Kong, especially our young people for the future, needs to understand the needs. They need to understand the needs of the mainland market as well as the rest of the world, because that's why Hong Kong calls ourselves a connector.
Right. Bernard, we've been talking about trawling for talents, and we had Chris Sun here 3 weeks ago. We have many talent schemes to attract talents, but on the other hand, we don't have enough people right now in Hong Kong. So if you talk about service level, I mean, how can you? I was talking with a restaurant owner. She said to me, "How can I ask for more from a limited number of staff?" So you mentioned the young people, and some have immigrated. Hopefully more are coming back. So what can we do to encourage them to stay on?
Well, this is a crisis for us. But then again, though, it wasn't because of this crisis. I think politically, it will be quite challenging for Hong Kong to open up our labor importation scheme. Because this has been not an issue we're talking about today. It has always been an issue. But in the past, there are a lot of resistance coming from the labor sector. But I think by now everyone would agree that we need to import more labor, talented labor to come to Hong Kong. So this crisis actually gives us the new mandate, allow us to bring in talent.
So hopefully with time, we will see the effect of it.
Well, absolutely. And then, of course, the key question, though, is because, we're not the only place looking for talents. Everywhere in the world are looking for talent. So the key is, are we competitive enough? Is our offerings competitive enough to draw talents?
Right. See, just now at the beginning of the show, you mentioned that you being the chairman of the M+ Museum, when you were overseas, people are very happy to see that. This is something that we have like a jewel for Hong Kong. With all these geopolitical tensions, looks like the government or even the businesses are very hard to connect. What else can we do apart from the jewel that you had?
In fact, you're absolutely correct. I think now government to government types of dialogue has been challenging. Challenging. Business to business also can be politicized as well, right? Depending on what the nature of the business. Even academics is also challenging, right? The one thing so far I see that remain a very open engagement and dialogue is in the arts and culture space and music. Partly, I think no one would argue that the people-to-people connection is wrong. Politics to politics, you can disagree, but in terms of people-to-people connection, it is still going strong. So the entire West Kowloon Cultural District, we signed 21 MOUs with international cultural organizations back in March. So those are still very healthy and still very willing from both ends.
I must barge in here because when you talk about the Western Kowloon, we know that is a very important one, but it faces an equal share of problems. So will that be sorted?
It will be solved. It will be resolved. Don't worry about it. I'm pretty confident with it.
Okay, and let's move on to something else. We've been encouraging integration between Hong Kong and the mainland, but now, I'm sure we read in the news, we have a lot of people going up to across the boundary and spending a lot of money there, but not the local businesses. So is this trend going to continue? And what can we do? Should we let it continue to happen, or shall we do something about it?
Well, to be honest with you, Eugene, I didn't see that coming either. That's the thing, right? I think these days, things moving so quickly and so fast. And I'm sure like you and Shenzhen, for me growing up, was just a small village. And next thing before you know it, yes, they produce a lot of cheap products, right? We love to go to Shenzhen to buy cheap products, right? Back, say, 20, 30 years ago. Today, Shenzhen remain cheap. But the difference is, but they are better.
Right.
Cheap and better and good services. And I think this is definitely came as a shock to us because we always command a premium in Hong Kong, which is fine. But now the question is, well, why are people paying the premium for? Mm-hmm. So we have to ask ourselves, what deserve that premium? Is that the product itself or the servicing?
Right.
Is it what else? So one of the big problems, obviously, for us is the cost, right? So it really comes down to is the real estate. The real estate is a big cost, and then labor costs. So I talked to someone from the catering trade, and the person told me labor cost is about 40%, mm-hmm. Rental cost is about 30%, and the food cost is about 30%.
Right.
And you can lower the rental costs, but food costs you really can't do much. But the labor cost is a big issue. So until we address these issues, I don't think our competitiveness is going to be very challenging.
Well, Bernard, I'm going to ask you the second last question. We haven't got a lot of time, but I'm sure the viewers will want your answers. You mentioned earlier that we didn't expect to see that Hong Kong people would want to have this new spending pattern. I mean, at the same time, you see with the visitors from the mainland, the numbers are far less, and they're looking for a very different experience. Look at the Ocean Park they used to come, or even the Sky City that we were having built right at the airport. So it goes to the point is, how do we reposition ourselves?
Well, to be honest, I think those kind of trade that you're talking about, they commands that premium and the advantage because there was a tax incentive there, because we're cheaper. They came here because they have tax allowances or tax advantage. Once that's gone, all of a sudden, we became not very competitive.
Right.
So we have to ask ourselves continuously, right? It's like, what are the needs they have? And what are the competitive advantage we have? Now, aviation definitely is a clear advantage. We have far more international flights out of Hong Kong than, say, Shenzhen or other places in GBA. So we have to look at every industry. It's like, where can we command that premium that nowhere else, let's say in GBA, have and Hong Kong can? And we just have to expand that in that trade.
Right.
But if we go down to the F&B level, unfortunately, clearly, we are no longer competitive at all.
Right. Bernard, I'm going to ask you the last question. Simple answer. How do you see Hong Kong in the next 1,000 days ahead?
You know what? I always believe in there's always a new hope from a new crisis, because it forces us to change, because we don't have a luxury to wait around.
Thank you, Bernard, for your valuable insights. It has been quite a journey over these 1,133 days, but Hong Kong's ability to innovate and reposition itself to seize new opportunities will ensure a bright and prosperous future for our city. As Xia Bolong said, we need to use new thinking, new methods, new routes to say new things and dare to do new things that have never been before to make constant breakthroughs. Have a good evening and see you next week.